The great hall was filled with noise. Alien voices, sharp and strange, echoed against the tall walls. The air was heavy with smoke and the smell of burning oils. Banners of many star systems hung from the ceiling. Glowing under pale blue lights, it was a night of victory, and the warriors of the galaxy had gathered to honor one man, a human. He walked into the hall slowly, his step steady, his face calm. He wore no crown, no medal, only the uniform of a soldier. But the eyes of thousands followed him. Some eyes filled with respect, others with jealousy, for this man had led the final charge in a battle that saved an entire world. Without him, the enemy fleet would have destroyed them all. The aliens called him forward. "Come, human commander." Their voices rose. "Accept your reward," the crowd cheered. Strange claws clapping, wings beating, tails striking the floor. He stepped onto the platform at the center of the hall. Everyone waited, wondering what gift he would receive. Gold, ships, power, something grand. But instead, the guards brought forward a small figure. A young alien girl, thin, weak, her wrists chained. She was pushed to her knees in front of him. Her eyes were wide with fear, her skin marked by bruises. She dared not lift her head. The crowd fell silent. Whispers spread like fire. This was the reward, a living being. A slave, to serve him, to obey him, to be his possession. Many eyes turned to the human. Would he smile? Would he accept? For to refuse a gift in this hall was not only an insult. It was dangerous, it could mean death, and yet to take her would mean accepting their cruel custom. The tension was sharp. The Speaker of the Council raised his long arm and declared, "Human, for your great victory, we gift you this slave. She is yours to command, to use or to break. Take her, and may your strength grow." The girl trembled. She did not look at the human. She expected pain, chains, and the same fate she had always known. Her people had no hope, no freedom, and now she was nothing more than a tool in the eyes of her masters. The hall grew still. Everyone waited for the human's answer. They expected laughter, or at least a nod. They expected him to take the chain in his hand, but the man only looked at the girl. And then at the chain, his face gave away nothing. But inside, his heart was burning. He thought of Earth, of the people who fought for freedom. He thought of every soldier who died for the right to live without chains, and he knew he could not accept. At last he spoke, his voice calm but clear. "Humans do not take slaves." The words cut through the silence like a blade. Gasps filled the air. The crowd was shocked. Some laughed, thinking he was joking. Others hissed with anger. To reject a gift in front of the council was bold, too bold. But the human did not step back. Instead, he bent down and touched the chain. Slowly he unfastened it. The sound of metal falling to the floor rang louder than any shout. The girl lifted her head in disbelief. No one had ever freed her. Not in front of so many. Not so simply. He looked at her and asked softly, "What is your name?" The hall erupted in chaos. Leaders shouted, warriors roared. "How dare he? He insults us. This is weakness. This is madness." But others stayed silent, watching, for they had never seen such a thing. They had never seen a victor free a prize. They had never seen a warrior treat a slave like a person. The girl could not speak. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Her name, no one had asked her name in years. She looked at him with wide eyes, and for the first time, she felt something she had forgotten long ago. Hope. The human turned to the council, his eyes steady, his voice strong. "If this is your gift, then I return it. I do not need a servant, I do not need chains. A true warrior stands with allies, not slaves." The silence that followed was heavy. The counselors stared, some furious, some curious. The girl stood beside him, still shaking, but no longer on her knees. The chain lay on the floor between them, broken, and in that moment, everyone in the hall knew something had changed. This was not weakness, this was not madness. This was something they did not understand yet, but soon they would. For humanity had given the galaxy many things, courage, sacrifice, victory, but tonight, humanity gave them something far greater, a lesson they would never forget. The uproar inside the great hall did not fade quickly. Alien leaders shouted at one another, their voices sharp, filled with rage and confusion. Some called the human brave, others called him foolish. But all agreed on one thing. No one had ever refused a gift like this. The council speaker's eyes glowed with anger. "You dare insult our honor?" he thundered. "To refuse a gift is to spit on our blood, our tradition, our strength." He pointed a long claw at the human. "Take the slave or leave this hall in disgrace." The human stood tall, his gaze steady. He was only one man among thousands, yet he did not waver. His hand rested lightly on the girl's shoulder. A quiet act of protection. She trembled, not from fear of him, but from the storm of voices that surrounded them. The hall pressed in like a great beast ready to strike. He answered calmly, his voice carrying over the noise. Honor is not built on chains. Strength is not built on fear. I will not take her. I will not treat her as a tool. A wave of shocked murmurs rolled through the crowd. For many, his words were nonsense. For others, they struck like lightning. The idea that power could exist without cruelty was beyond them. The girl stared up at him, her eyes wide. She whispered something so faint it was almost lost. My name is Lyra. It was the first time she had spoken her name in years. The sound of it made the human smile softly, and the hall grew restless once more. One warrior, broad and covered in scars, stepped forward. He sneered, his teeth sharp as blades. You shame yourself, human. That creature was bred to serve. She has no name, no will, no worth. The human turned his head slowly, meeting the warrior's glare. She has more worth than you will ever understand, he said. The hall gasped again, an insult, bold and dangerous, thrown in front of thousands. The warrior snarled and gripped the hilt of his blade. He wanted blood. He wanted to prove the human wrong with steel. But the council speaker raised a hand, stopping him. Not yet, the counselor's eyes said. Let us see how far this human will go. The girl, Lyra, stayed close to the human. Her body still weak, her chains now broken. She did not know why he protected her. She did not know why he spoke as if she mattered. But a tiny fire sparked in her heart, something she had thought long dead. The human guided her gently toward the edge of the platform. Every step he took felt heavier than the last. The weight of every watching eye pressed on him. Yet he did not bow, he did not break, he only kept moving, calm and sure. Aliens whispered as he passed. Madness, one spat. Pride, another hissed. But a few leaned closer, their voices lower, filled with curiosity, strange, but strong. At the doors of the hall, guards crossed their weapons. You may not leave without permission, one barked. The human paused, then spoke in a tone so steady that even the guards hesitated. Move. Or do you wish to explain to your leaders why you tried to stop the man who saved your world? The guards exchanged nervous looks. They remembered the battle. They remembered his command, his courage, his impossible victory. Slowly, they lowered their weapons. The path opened. The human stepped forward with Lyra at his side. But before they could leave, the council speaker shouted, You walk away with nothing. Human, you think yourself noble, but you are weak. This kindness will break you. The human stopped at the threshold and turned his head slightly. His voice carried clear and strong. Kindness does not break, it builds, it makes allies. It creates bonds you cannot see. With that, he walked out, the doors closing behind him. The hall was left in chaos. Leaders shouting, warriors snarling, whispers spreading like fire. They had seen something they could not erase. A refusal that was not cowardice but defiance. And a seed of doubt began to grow in their hearts. Outside, under the night sky of a foreign world, the human looked down at Lyra. She stared back, lost, unsure, but her eyes no longer empty. He gave her a small smile. You are free now, he said. She shook her head, confused. Free? What does that mean? He crouched so his eyes were level with hers. It means no one owns you. It means you can choose. You can stay or you can go. The choice is yours. Her hands trembled. Her lips parted. No one had ever given her a choice before. Tears filled her eyes, though she did not understand why. She whispered again, barely audible, I choose to stay, the human nodded. Then stay, not as a slave, but as a person, as someone who walks beside me. For a moment, the galaxy felt still. Two figures standing together under alien stars. One man, one freed slave, and a new story beginning. Behind them, in the great hall, alien leaders argued in anger and fear. They thought the human's choice was weakness. But what they did not know, what they could not see, was that his refusal had already changed everything, and soon the entire galaxy would learn the truth. The human's refusal spread through the city like wildfire. Every tavern, every market stall, every gathering place was filled with whispers. The story was too strange, too bold, too impossible to keep quiet. A warrior refusing a prize, not just any prize, but a living slave gifted by the council. The aliens argued in the streets. Some furious, some confused, and some secretly curious. Humans are weak, many spat. They do not understand power, others hissed. But a smaller voice, quieter yet growing, whispered, or maybe, humans are stronger than we thought. Lyra walked beside the human in the days that followed. She was no longer bound by chains, yet her steps were uncertain. Her body carried the marks of years in captivity. Her mind carried the weight of fear and obedience. But every time she looked at him, she saw something no master had ever shown her. Patience, kindness, and something she could not name. At night, in the quiet of their camp, she asked questions. Why did you not take me? Why did you not use me like the others would? And he answered simply, because no one deserves chains. These words struck her deeper than any wound. They did not erase her pain, but they planted something small inside her. A fragile spark of hope, a dangerous spark that, if seen by the wrong eyes, could lead to her death. The council, however, did not see hope. They saw insult. They saw rebellion. To them, the Humans' Act was a slap across the face of their culture. And cultures do not forget insults. A secret meeting was called. Deep within the stone chambers of the palace, the council members gathered, their faces hard, their voices low. This human disrespects us before all, one hissed. He spits on our honor, growled another. He must be punished, said a third. But the eldest counselor raised a clawed hand. Silencing them, not yet, he said slowly, his eyes gleaming. He is loved by the people for his victory. To strike him now would make him a martyr. Better to let him destroy himself. Better to let his kindness show its weakness than we will strike, and so, they plotted meanwhile outside the palace. The alien warriors laughed at him openly. They mocked him in the streets. They called Lyra pet, burden, and worthless gift. They jeered at the human, saying he had thrown away glory. But when they looked into his eyes, their laughter faltered, for he did not bow his head. He did not fight back with anger. He simply walked on, steady as ever, and somehow, that unsettled them more than if he had drawn his blade. Lyra felt their stares, their insults, their hatred. Each word was like a knife. But when she looked up at him, she saw calm. She clung to that calm like a lifeline, for if he could walk forward, then maybe she could too. One evening, a group of alien children approached. They had heard the stories, but unlike their elders, they carried no hate. They stared at Lyra with wide eyes. One small child asked innocently, "Is it true the human calls you family?" The words froze her in place, family, a word she had not known in years. Her throat tightened, her eyes burned. She did not know how to answer, but when she looked at him, he gave a small nod. "Yes," he said softly. "She is family now," the children gasped, their eyes shining with wonder, and they ran off, shouting, "The human makes slaves into family." The rumor spread faster than fire in dry grass. It leapt from lips to lips, from home to home. The council tried to silence it, but it was too late. The people were already talking. The people were already asking questions they had never dared to ask. Could a slave truly become family? Could kindness be stronger than fear? Could humans be showing them a path they had never seen before? The council fumed, but they held their claws. They needed proof of weakness. They needed the human to fail. So they waited. But in their waiting, they did not see the change beginning to grow. Lyra herself began to change, her eyes no longer always lowered, her voice no longer always trembling. At night, she laughed quietly at the human stories of Earth. In the morning, she dared to stand a little taller. The chains had left her skin, but now they were leaving her heart one night. As the stars burned bright above them, she whispered to him, "They hate you for freeing me," and he answered, calm as always, "They hate what they do not understand, but one day they will see." And though she still carried fear, for the first time in her life she believed him. Inside the council chamber, however, the elders sharpened their claws. The human had shocked them all with his refusal, but shock was not enough. Soon they would act, and when they acted, the galaxy would learn what it truly meant to challenge tradition. For now the human walked with Lyra under alien stars, unaware that his simple act of kindness had already begun to shake the pillars of an empire, unaware that his refusal would spark not just whispers, but a storm, and that storm was coming closer. Step by step, the days turned into weeks, and still the human walked through the alien city with Lyra at his side. At first she kept her distance, her head always lowered, her steps uncertain. She was free, but freedom felt strange, almost frightening. Chains had been her world for so long that she did not know how to live without them. The human, however, was patient. He never forced her to speak, never demanded her service. Instead, he offered her simple things: food when she was hungry, water when she was thirsty, and quiet company when her thoughts were heavy. These small acts, so ordinary to him, were extraordinary to her. One evening, he sat by the fire, a small flame flickering against the alien night. He picked up a stick and began drawing lines in the dirt. Curious, Lyra watched. "These are letters," he explained softly. "This one means A, this one means B." She tilted her head. Confused. "Letters?" she asked. "Yes," he said with a small smile. The building blocks of words, of names, of stories. For the first time, she leaned closer. Her finger traced the lines he made. Clumsy but careful, she whispered, her name written in the dirt. She had never seen it before. Never imagined that her name could be drawn. Her heart beat faster, and her lips curved into the faintest of smiles. It was the first true smile he had seen from her. The next day, she tried again. Her letters shaky, uneven, but filled with pride. Every night after that, she asked for more. More letters, more words, more stories of the human homeworld called Earth. And every night he taught her patiently, gently, as if she were not a burden, but a student. As if she had worth. Word of this teaching spread. Aliens who spied from the shadows carried the tale back to the council. "The human wastes his time. He teaches a slave to read," they sneered. But even they could not hide their unease, for they saw the light in her eyes, the light that had never been there before. The council grew restless. "This cannot continue," one elder hissed. "If others see this, if other slaves begin to hope, our order will fall," another growled. "Hope is more dangerous than any weapon." But the eldest counselor only narrowed his eyes. "Let him continue. The higher he climbs with this foolish kindness, the harder he will fall." Yet beyond the council's chambers, the people whispered, not all with hatred, not all with scorn. Some were curious, some even fascinated. Could it be true? Could a slave be more than a tool? Could she learn? The idea was dangerous, yet it could not be silenced. Meanwhile, the bond between the human and Lyra grew stronger. She began to walk with her head a little higher. She dared to meet the eyes of strangers in the street. Her fear was still there, but it no longer ruled her completely. When others mocked her, she no longer shrank away. She looked to the human, and his calm strength gave her courage. One night, she sat by the fire again and asked him, "Why do you teach me? Why do you care?" He looked at her, his eyes steady. "Because knowledge is freedom, and you deserve to be free, not just in chains, but in mind." Her chest ached at his words. No one had ever told her she deserved anything before. She felt a strange warmth, not fear, not pain, but something new, something she could not name. The bond was not just in words, but in trust. When danger came, small groups of angry warriors throwing stones at them in the streets, he did not draw his blade immediately. Instead, he shielded her with his body. His voice calm yet firm. "We walk in peace," he said. And though the stones kept flying, his voice never broke. Lyra watched him with wide eyes. Not just a warrior, but a protector, and slowly her fear turned into loyalty. She began to help him in return. At first, small things, gathering wood for the fire, fetching water from the well, but soon she did more. She asked about his world, and when he spoke of Earth's oceans and forests, she repeated the words until she could remember them. She wanted to learn, not because he asked, but because she wanted to stand beside him as more than a rescued slave. The bond between them did not go unnoticed. Some aliens spat in disgust. Shameful. He treats her as equal. But others began to wonder. If a slave could learn, could speak, could even laugh, was she still truly a slave? The question spread, dangerous and sharp, and the council grew uneasy. One night, as the fire burned low, Lyra whispered, "I do not feel like nothing anymore." The human turned to her, his voice quiet but filled with certainty. "You were never nothing, Lyra. You only needed someone to remind you." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not from pain. They were from something else, something stronger. She wiped them away and whispered back, "Then I will never forget." In that moment, the bond was sealed. No chain bound her, no master owned her. What tied her to him was not fear, but choice, and choice was more powerful than any iron shackle. In the council's chambers, the elders argued. Some demanded the human's exile, others his death. But the eldest raised his voice again. "Not yet. Let this bond grow. When it breaks, it will shatter loudly. and all will see that kindness is weakness. Yet outside those walls, beyond their cold plans, something far different was growing. Not weakness but strength, not chains but freedom. And in the quiet between firelight and stars, the galaxy's most dangerous weapon was being born. A bond made not of steel but of trust. The bond between the human and Lyra grew stronger each day. But while she learned letters and stories by the fire, the council's anger burned hotter. They watched the whispers spread among the people. They saw children imitating Lyra, scratching letters into the dirt. They heard traders speak of her smile, of the strange idea that a slave could stand tall. To the council, this was not a story of hope. It was a threat. If one slave could rise, what would stop others from trying? If kindness could turn chains into trust, what would happen to their order built on fear? The elders gathered in the dark chamber, torches flickering against the walls. One slammed his clawed hand onto the stone table. This human poisons our world. He insults us with his defiance. He spreads weakness. Another leaned forward, his voice low and sharp. Then let us cut out this weakness. Let us crush him before his ideas spread further. But the eldest counselor shook his head slowly. Not with open war. He is still honored as the savior of our people. Strike him openly, and some may call him a martyr. No, we must test him. We must force him into a choice he cannot win. So they whispered their plan. And in the shadows of the city, their loyal warriors sharpened their blades. Meanwhile, Lyra had begun to change in ways she barely understood. She still remembered the chains, the fear, the endless days of silence, but now she could read her name. She could speak without trembling. She even laughed sometimes, a sound she had once thought lost forever. The human never asked her to thank him, never demanded her loyalty, but she gave it freely. Yet danger was closing around them one evening. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they walked through the market. The human bought fruit from a stall, smiling as he taught Lyra the word for apple. But then the crowd shifted. A group of armored warriors stepped forward, blocking their path. The leader sneered, his voice loud enough for all to hear. You think you are better than us, human? You think your mercy makes you strong? Prove it then. Show us your strength with the gift you refused. He threw a blade at the human's feet, the metal ringing against the stone. Use her. The warrior growled. Command her to fight, command her to bleed. If she is truly your equal, let her prove it. The crowd gathered, whispering, some eager for blood, others curious. All eyes fell on the human and Lyra. The air was heavy with tension. The human looked at the blade, then at Lyra. She stood frozen, her hands shaking, her breath quick. She remembered the years when she had been forced to obey. Her body braced for the order she feared would come, but instead the human bent down, picked up the blade, and held it in his hand. His voice was calm, steady, unshaken. She will not fight for me, because I do not need her to prove her worth. Her worth is not in blood, but in choice. The crowd gasped, some in anger, some in awe. The warrior snarled, Then fight me yourself. Coward. The human nodded once without fear. As you wish. The fight that followed was quick, brutal, and unforgettable. The alien warrior was strong, his claws fast and deadly. But the human's movements were precise. Calm and efficient, he did not fight with rage, but with control. Each strike measured, each step steady, and in the end, the alien warrior lay defeated on the stone floor. The human dropped the blade beside him and stepped back. I do not fight to dominate. I fight to protect, he said, and then he turned. Offering his hand to Lyra, she took it. Her fear melting into pride, the crowd erupted in noise. Some shouted insults, furious at his defiance, but others whispered with wonder. They had seen not weakness but strength born from choice. They had seen a bond stronger than chains. The council, watching from the shadows, seethed. Their test had failed. The human had not broken. Instead, he had turned their trap into a victory, but their plan was not over. The eldest counselor's eyes glowed cold. This was only the first trial. The next will strike deeper. We will see how far his mercy can reach. That night, as they sat by the fire, Lyra looked at the human, her voice quiet. They want to break you, they will never stop. He met her eyes, calm as always. Let them try. Kindness is not weakness, Lyra. It is the strongest weapon we have. She stared at him. Her chest tight. For the first time, she realized she would fight for him. Not because she was ordered, but because she wanted to. Her loyalty was no longer born from fear, but from love, and though she did not speak it, She knew the truth. Together, they were stronger than any council, stronger than any chain. But in the dark halls of power, the storm gathered. The council had declared war not with armies but with schemes, and the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if kindness could survive the cruelty of tradition. The human's defiance spread like ripples across a still pond. Wherever he walked, eyes followed, whispers followed, judgment followed. But so too did curiosity, for he had not fallen. As the council promised he would, instead, he stood taller. And beside him Lyra stood taller too. The market that once mocked them now watched in silence. The children that once only stared now greeted them with shy smiles. And though many still spat cruel words, something deeper was beginning to shift. For every insult thrown at Lyra, there was another voice that wondered, if she can change, then what about the others? The council seethed in secret. Every attempt to shame him only gave him more honor. Every trap turned into a story of strength. And so they plotted again, sharper this time. If kindness was his weapon, they would make him prove it against fire and steel. But while they schemed, life around the human and Lyra grew into something unexpected. At first she followed him like a shadow. Always quiet, always cautious, but now she began to laugh more. She began to speak freely, to ask questions, to challenge his stories. And every time she did, he answered with patience, never treating her as less, always as equal. One evening, they shared a meal with alien villagers. The human told stories of Earth's oceans and forests, and Lyra repeated the words she had learned, her voice proud. The villagers watched amazed, not because of the human's stories, but because of hers. She was no longer silent, no longer broken. She was alive, and they could see it soon. She began to call him something new, not commander, not savior, not master, but family. The first time she said it, her voice shook with fear. Would he laugh? Would he reject her? But instead, he smiled warmly and placed a hand on her shoulder. Yes, he said softly. Family. The word spread faster than any rumor before it. The human calls her family, the people whispered, not slave, not servant, family. The idea was unthinkable, almost blasphemy, and yet, when they saw the two together, walking side by side, they could not deny it. The council called it madness, but some of the younger warriors, some of the poorer villagers began to see something else. They began to wonder if this madness was in fact strength. For a slave obeyed from fear, but family stood by choice, and choice could not be broken so easily. The test came sooner than either of them expected. Raiders from a rival clan struck a border village one night. The council did nothing. They wanted to watch, to see what the human would do when word reached him. He did not hesitate. He gathered his gear, his blade, and he set out, and Lyra followed. The villagers cowered as the raiders tore through their homes. But then they saw the human stride into the flames. Calm and unshaken, he fought with precision, with strength, each strike of his blade pushing the raiders back. But it was not just him. For when a raider cornered a child, it was Lyra who pulled the child away. When fire spread through a home, it was Lyra who carried water beside him for the first time. She was not just rescued, she was saving others. By the end of the night, the raiders fled. The villagers looked at the human with awe, but their eyes turned to Lyra too. They saw her not as a slave, not as nothing, but as family in truth, and they began to whisper it themselves. She is his family, the council raged. They had hoped the raid would break him. Instead, it gave him more honor, more loyalty from the people. But what angered them most was the sight of Lyra standing tall beside him, a slave who had fought not with chains but with choice that night. As the village celebrated, the human looked at her. You saved them, he said, his voice steady, her eyes lowered, but not in shame, in disbelief. I only did what you would have done, she whispered. He shook his head, smiling softly. No, you did what you chose to do, and that is what makes it powerful. Her chest swelled with pride, a feeling she had never known. She realized then that she no longer followed him out of fear or even gratitude. She followed him because she wanted to, because together they were stronger, because together they were family. But beyond the firelight of celebration, the council sharpened their knives once more. Family was more dangerous than kindness. Family meant loyalty that could not be broken. And if one slave could become family, then the galaxy itself might begin to change. The eldest counselor's eyes burned with fury. This ends soon, he growled. The human has turned insult into legend. He has turned weakness into power. But we will strike where even family cannot protect him. The night grew quiet. But the storm was already gathering. The human and Lyra did not yet know that by calling her family he had not only shocked the galaxy, he had declared war on its oldest tradition. The days after the raid carried a strange silence. The villagers honored the human and Lyra, offering food, shelter, and gratitude. Children followed Lyra with wide eyes, asking her to show them letters. Old warriors nodded at the human with respect, even if they did not fully understand him. But in the halls of power, the council seethed. They had waited for him to fall. They had hoped kindness would break against fire. But instead it had grown stronger. It was no longer just his story, it was theirs too. The whispers spread faster than the council could silence. The human makes family where there were only slaves. The slave fights not with fear but with love. Their bond is stronger than chains. For the council, this was dangerous. It was rebellion without banners. It was war without weapons, and it spread like light in the dark. So they made their final plan. The human had defeated insults. He had defeated warriors. He had even defeated fear. But there was one thing they believed he could not withstand. The council gathered their assassins, silent killers trained to end lives without warning. They sent them into the night with one order: kill the girl, break his family, and he will break with it. But fate has a way of turning plans into legends, for when the assassins struck, they did not find weakness, they found Lyra. No longer the trembling girl in chains, but a young woman who had learned to stand tall. She cried out, and the human was there in an instant. Together they fought, back to back, she with the blade he had taught her to hold, he with the calm strength that had carried him through every trial. The assassins fell one by one, not because they faced unmatched strength, but because they faced something greater. They faced loyalty, they faced choice, they faced family, and family did not yield. When dawn came, the people awoke to the sight of the human and Lyra standing together, alive, unbroken, unafraid. The assassins' bodies lay as proof of the council's treachery. The whispers turned into cries. The people were no longer simply curious, they were angry. They had seen the council try to destroy what they had come to admire. And for the first time they began to question openly,
why do we chain our own when freedom makes them stronger?
The council tried to silence the voices, but it was too late. The seed had grown into a tree. The human's refusal had become a symbol, and Lyra, once nameless, once voiceless, had become living proof that hope could not be chained. That night, as the stars burned above them, Lyra sat beside the fire, her eyes shining with something new. Not just hope, not just pride, but purpose. You gave me freedom, she said softly. But more than that, you gave me family. I thought I was nothing, but now I know I am more. And I will never let them take that away again. The human looked at her, calm and steady as always. You were always more, Lyra. I only reminded you, she smiled, and for the first time, the smile carried no shadow of fear. It was a smile of strength, a smile of legacy. The story of the human and Lyra spread beyond the city, beyond the world, beyond the stars. Other humans heard it and stood taller, proud that one of their own had changed the galaxy not with chains, but with kindness. Other species heard it and began to wonder. If one human could turn a slave into family, then what else could humanity do? The council tried to erase the tale, but it lived in whispers, in songs, in stories told around fires, and the more they tried to bury it, the brighter it burned, until even those who hated the human found themselves repeating his words. A true warrior stands with allies, not slaves. Generations would pass. The human and Lyra's names would echo in halls of learning, in camps of warriors, in homes of families. And always the story began the same way, with a gift meant to chain him, and a refusal that shocked them all. Lyra herself would grow, no longer the trembling girl who feared her own voice, but a leader, a teacher, a mother. She would tell her children not of her chains, but of the night she heard her name spoken with respect. She would tell them of the human who gave her family instead of fear. And so the galaxy learned a lesson it had long forgotten, that fear can build empires, but love can build legacies, that chains can bind bodies, but choice binds hearts, and that sometimes the greatest strength is not in taking, but in giving. The council had wanted to prove him weak. Instead, they had proven him eternal, for when people spoke of humanity after that day, they did not speak of their weapons, their victories, or their armies. They spoke of the human who refused, the human who freed, the human who made family, and in every corner of the stars, From the darkest mines to the grandest palaces, one truth spread that could never be silenced. Humans do not own, humans do not chain. Humans create family, and that truth was the legacy that no council, no empire, no chain could ever break.